Well, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jason Levine, and thank you so much for joining me today for the Friday Masterclass, where today, once again, we are revisiting collaboration, but this time I've got two new special guests, and specifically we're going to be talking about collaborative workflows, remote collaborative workflows between Premiere and After Effects. A lot of you have been asking about this. Last week we featured LucidLink. Prior to that, we were kind of deep diving into team projects. Well, now you're going to get to see all of this come together whilst using Premiere and After Effects together with two people who are also editing in totally different remote locations. So yes, not like we have to prove that to you, and most of us are remote these days, but this is really sort of a proof positive, like how this works, the efficiency, the speed, the process, and these two incredible guests who are going to join me momentarily. They're super fun. They love getting into the weeds, kind of talking about all the technical aspects of all these things, how to set it up, how to organize, how to make it efficient when you're working in this kind of remote environment, particularly when you're working between Premiere and After Effects. So that's coming up for you. We've got a lot of stuff to cover. As always, we're coming to you live across multiple networks. In fact, today we are on all the networks. We are on Adobe Live, on Behance, several YouTube channels, Twitch, LinkedIn, and the Twitters. So thank you so much wherever you are watching. Great to see you. And as always, a couple of quick shout outs to everyone. See, we've got Gino Marbella. Great to see you again. Robert Wennerberg, Uma Korn. All right, Steve, how's it going? Z by HP, and Tim, and Michael, and Robert. Stephanie, how's it going? Someone asking if I can play. Also, Sprach Zarathustra on the keyboards. Ba-da, da-da, da-da. I would actually, I can't lie to you. I know I said the studio is done, everything's all done. I actually haven't wired the synths in yet. Everything else is wired behind them, but the actual synths aren't wired yet. So we'll see. We'll target that maybe for next week's stream when we kind of wrap this little collaboration series. But I will try and make that happen for you. All right, we shall see. And what's up? We got Crucial here. Great to see you. Thank you so much. Okay, so listen, let's go ahead and get right into it. So I've got two guests joining us from Gannett, USA today. And again, they're going to talk about not only sort of how to do this sort of remote work, leveraging things like team projects. They too also take advantage of LucidLink. I want to thank LucidLink again for kind of showing up last week in our chats and answering a lot of our users' questions. And they are wonderful people to boot. So my guests are Justin Schultz and Mike DeAngelis. Wonderful to see you both. Hello.
Hello. Thanks very much, Jason, for having us. We're excited to be here. This should be fun. Yeah, we'll just get right into intros. My name is Justin Schultz. I work for Gannett, which is the parent company of USA Today. I work for a division called USA Today Studios. I'm the senior video editor for digital franchises out of there. And so what I do, I'm a senior editor. I'm actually also a post-production supervisor or manager. So I own all of our workflows. I own most of our media management, and I just pretty much keep things on the rails on a day-to-day basis, and make sure everyone's kind of putting that spit shine on things at the end. So our studio, it's a really kind of wide-ranging digital studio. We do everything from half-hour docu-series style shows to mid-form to short-form to social and everything in between. And I'd say we probably, what I oversee, probably about maybe 5 hours of content a month would be a decent estimate between what comes out. Lots of remote work, as you're going to see. We jumped in pretty early in pandemic to things like products like team projects and LucidLink, and it's been a really fun journey of discovery and working in this new world, and we're excited to get into it. So I'll toss it over to Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. So yeah, I'm the senior motion designer here at USAT Studios. I work very closely with Justin, obviously, and what my team does is basically we make the motion graphics that you see in the pieces that Justin's talking about, the different series, and we also service the wider USA Today video team, so people making short form videos in lots of different remote locations. We're making templates, we're making one-off graphics, so yeah, it's basically,
and to the point of kind of remote collaboration, Gannett is a company that owns not just USA Today, but over 200 local newspaper properties across the country. And, and each one of these has a video department too. And so, we're actually just through our Adobe Enterprise account and through some of these collaborative tools, we're actually able to service that entire network really just kind of between the two of us in some in some capacities.
That's amazing.
It's really, and we're gonna show you a little bit of that, but it's pretty cool, and we've really been able to find some pretty simple things. So simple ways of doing these pretty things that we wouldn't have imagined trying to do a couple years ago. So
yeah, and I imagine on a large part, having sort of gotten into this sort of involuntarily in the sort of pandemic era, now you've really refined how to make that work and how to be more efficient regardless of where people are, to really service all the various properties across the country and elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what we find, as you say, as these workflows and these tools have sort of matured and figuring out how to use them, we find that even like we're adopting these things even when we are all together, and if we are in the same spot, and we're doing the hybrid thing, so we've got a requirement to be in the office sometimes. We do have a studio, so there's a physical presence that just sometimes you got to be in the studio. Right. But what's really nice about these workflows is that they work across remote, they work across hybrid. We love what we've been able to accomplish in them so much that we're even going to stick to this even if we're co-located and on the same server and on the same machine. So nice. Yeah, it's really fun. So I think we're ready to kind of just jump back in. Are we ready
to get into it?
Let's do it.
Justin, I assume we're going to start with your machine
first. Start with me, and we'll hand it off over appropriately when we get
Sounds
to
great.
Mike. Yeah.
All right.
So we're just on the splash screen. I'm just going to go right in. I'm going to go ahead and open our team project. Going to get it from our list here. What we're going to demo is one of our explainer series. It's called Just the Facts, and it's a graphic-driven explainer series. It's a pretty well-known genre at this point. It's VO graphic-driven. It's custom graphic-driven as well, and this fills a really nice kind of short-form spot on our website, and of course we traffic across places. This is a project that's done, but we're going to kind of just reverse engineer it and show you
deconstruct a little bit.
Deconstruct and show how the sausage was made. So on this project, the first step is a script is written. We use a lot of producer editors. We're kind of lucky in that sense to have a lot of people who are familiar with Premiere, and that really, you're going to see that is a huge part of what we're trying to leverage in this collaborative workflow is people, more and more people can kind of, as I say, get in the boat where you haven't before. And I'll get into a little bit of how we have things set up, but just to speak a little bit about that. There's this kind of like paradigm shift that you have to get because you have to think about like a NLE was not a shared space ever. It was the place that an editor sat, and we all know that there's the the troll stereotype of the editor in their dark cave, never
pale,
coming out,
sweaty upper lip.
Yes, exactly, and a lot of editors gravitated towards that. So it actually even becomes, almost this kind of cultural thing we have to start to unpack between your teammates and such like that. But, the real part, the real kind of idea that's beyond the functions of the product or things like that is like, how do you work in here when this is now a shared space? This is, this is not just, okay, I'm going to just export. No, it can be organized however I want. As long as I know where something is, it works. That no longer works. So, one thing we've done is we've taken concepts from, if you've worked on shared storage, you can sort of start to bring those concepts in where you have to have organizational structures. You have to have naming structures. Otherwise, it just becomes chaos. And the idea is it's pretty simple. It's just like you got to know where something goes, and you need to know what it's called. And if we're all on the same page of that, we can move so smoothly. I joke around and I say, look, if we're doing everything as well as we can, we don't have to ever talk to each other because everything's just apparent. It's like, I need to ask anybody where to put this file. I don't need to ask anybody what to call this file because we have this system. And so and it's beyond the nitty gritty of what we're going to get into, but I've just really found that it's this kind of like this mind shift of how we're going to collaborate and sort of work together. And you really start to, and as you're going to see, we're going to get these different stakeholders in here. Different stakeholders have different approaches to some of these processes that editors are used to owning. So,
do you feel like you have to make an explainer for your explainer in a way? Like
I kind of do actually. That's a good idea. We might have to get that one down. So, so a lot of it starts with our organizational structure. I will say, since these are serial shows, we rely very heavily on project templates. And we've actually leveraged that both ways. We've done it where we've got project templates that are team projects. It's a template. You'd open that up. You could do a save as and rename it to make your active one. Since we are on LucidLink on a shared storage, we can also we've also done it where we've used a local project, and you just open the local project. I've lost it. So, but you'll open the local project and convert that to team project, which is a great function that we use back and forth. Whether we're taking a team project back to local for some reason, or just it's a kind of a good way to let an individual start a project and get into something, get it all set up, and then just share it out to the team. So
that makes sense.
So this project would have been started from a template. So we have a lot of kind of what we call global assets, things like music and sound effects and reused graphics, our mogerts for it, and then just preloaded with some bins just to make it easier upon ingest and things like that. So and we even like to use this project in particular doesn't really need a very heavy sequence template because this one's a very from scratch kind of thing, but we do in other projects have a sequence that's got a bug loaded into it, or certain graphics, an intro, an outro, or certain music. It's just preloaded, and what I actually love about that is, I'm even loading in track effects on my template. So it's like I know, if I know like this VO is always coming from this same source, like I know what kind of EQ or compression I want on it. I can load it in here. Throw a hard limiter on the end, and that's great. That's just saved and becomes templatized, so no one has to worry about setting it up.
I love that, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's something that sometimes, not unlike audio in general in most productions, it gets lost on people that, the template project isn't just the visual elements, like you said, the visual intro, maybe it's consistent, logo bugs, lower thirds or something like that, assuming people will edit. But it's also the audio mix, right? Like you said, having the hard limiter at the end at a specific level, and having the right compression and everything on those individual tracks, because it's going to be a VO coming from the same source, same recording, same microphone, essentially. So you have a starting point, and you don't have to fuss about with those things. That's huge in terms of knocking this kind of content out. Right?
Yeah, and we work with, like I said, we work with a lot of producer editors, which is good. But then at this, the flip side of that coin is, folks who don't have that super deep experience, or they're not used to the hundreds of or thousands of tasks, of micro tasks someone might be doing any given day. And, it feels like, oh, that takes me 3 seconds to reset that setting whenever I start something. But you do that a couple hundred times a week, and you've saved yourself a lot of time. So
absolutely.
We love templates. I mean, even things like sequence settings. I mean, if you have specific sequence settings or render formats that you want just baked in, so you don't have to worry that a junior editor is going to open up a sequence and not know what to set it to, you got it all kind of just preloaded in these templates. So preload not only things that we need, but we also can demonstrate our structure in here. You come in and someone, I always encourage people just poke around, just like get in there, see how it's set up, because I'm making everything based on patterns, right? And it's like I try to set everything up as a pattern. You can come in and try to sort of deduce what the pattern is, and then make your own choices based on that. Doesn't always go that smoothly, but that's the foundation of the concept to help sort of leverage. So you'll see this. It's fairly straightforward, but the fact that we're kind of in agreement with what we're calling things, with where we're putting things, just helps grease the wheels like so easily. So,
I love that.
One other small weedy thing I will mention, some settings that are kind of important for this workflow that we're doing. Um, First of all, you may have covered this last week, but since we are using LucidLink, one thing that's really important is to not have your media cache set to LucidLink.
Yes.
That needs to be set
yeah.
on your internal super fast drive. But I do mention that because the other important setting that we do adjust in this is our scratch disk settings, which we do put on LucidLink for a couple reasons. The main reason is we do use a lot of motion graphics templates, a lot of Mogarts. We have some in this one. We have some other projects. We've got 20 different Mogarts that are part of the package. So what this does is we make sure we're setting our motion graphics template media scratch to a designated location on LucidLink. So whenever a Mogart gets imported once, it's going to be linked across anybody who
whomever is trying to play that back will have that cache already there. So
exactly, and you don't have to.
That makes sense.
And you don't have to manage that motion graphics template media going to that default place on the user's document folder, and then it's Premiere's got to track all that, which it can do, but it just simplifies things since we're all in the same spot. The other really cool thing is we can actually share video previews. If everyone's got their previews set here, I render it on my timeline. The next person who opens it up, whether it's a team project or a local project that's all on the same LucidLink file space, just render it once and everybody's got it on their timeline. So.
And those links, because it's seen as a drive, mounted drive, they're not changing. So they're guaranteed to be there. Makes the concept of having to relink those things kind of go away, which is awesome. Great suggestion.
Cool. So that's kind of our basic setup. The idea is to put a place for everything, and even to try to sort of proactively think about what might be coming in that you haven't accounted for and give that a place. Because again, it gets cultural. You find people get gung-ho to put it somewhere, and they're like, I got an idea, or they've got that's why I say it's like we really got to be in agreement on how we're talking things. I mean, like even if you're talking about a footage bin versus a media bin or a video bin, like someone says it's in the footage bin, and we're like, well, yeah, but it's actually called the video bin in this project. Like those are, it seems really small, but those are all things that really slow you down and make you gotta chat back and forth, and then that person's not available to respond to you. And so, but these are all these kind of considerations that we got to make now that multiple people can be in here. So let's get into getting multiple people in here.
Let's do it.
So I started this, and so an example of the way this project could work is we're also lucky that our producer editor in this case also is our voiceover talent for it. So they're able to really kind of just start the project on their own and get it up and running. So the use case, the example that I've got for you here is that producer editor would have started the new project from the template. They would record their voiceover. I do believe they do it on the timeline in Premiere. I don't think they're doing any kind of round trip right now. So they'll lay down their VO. Let me get you a little more space here. They'll lay down their VO. They're going to go ahead and time it out however they want. Because the idea is we want to get a basically locked VO track before we hand off to our editor. So what I have here is I've got our VO track down. Let me go ahead and show you our naming convention here just real quick. It's nothing crazy. It's just a date. There's a department code. There's a franchise code, the name of it, and then sequence versioning is a big topic, and there's a lot of ways to handle that. And honestly, with some of the additions to team projects, we're rethinking how we do that. But we like to just kind of robustly version things, just sort of for an over communication, visibility kind of thing. So our convention here is we have an 01 for a version. We have initials. That was the person who was on that sequence, and then if there's any other information. So this was our special projects, just the facts, diabetes video, first version that our RJ editor worked on, and this was the VO that they laid down. And another small thing, I put the initials, but I put the number before the initials, so it will sort alphanumerically if I wanted. Yeah. So I have this VO section, this VO sequence. Looks good. It's ready to go. Everything's timed out. And so now I'm ready to hand it off to my graphic designer. And so the way our graphics designer, like Mike's likes to approach it, is that since this is going to be partially graphics and partially B-roll, our graphics team will take the script and decide which parts that they want to do bespoke graphics for versus which parts are going to be like stock B-roll. So this is the point at which our graphics team can go in and just grab what they need, grab the VO sections that they need to work on their graphics. And sure, I could have an editor communicate with the graphics team and export the section of the VO that they want, but with team projects, I can just let the designer go and do that because they know what they want more than the editor, and we can cut out that step of communicating in the telephone and where that gets mixed up or miscommunicated. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to invite Mike now to our project. I'm going to go up here to the collaborator window, going to add it here. Mike's right there at my drop down. I'm going to select him and select invite. Oh, you were already on this one, Mike. I'm going to remove you and reinvite you. How about that? Okay, so
I'm going to
all right, I'm inviting Mike now, and
all right, so I'm going to switch over to Mike's screen while you're doing that.
Let's go over and switch over to Mike. Yeah.
Cool. So I think the first thing, I also had the project open, which is a bit tricky, but I just want to show everyone that in my Creative Cloud window, I have that invitation waiting. And I'm going to go ahead and accept. It says I've accepted. And now I'm going to open team project. Oh, and it's on this window. Sorry, everyone. And it's right here. And I'm going to hit open. And then it should look identical to what Justin just had open.
Yeah.
And in fact, I actually had the project open, so I was watching Justin's work in real time.
Oh, sweet.
And so what we're doing here is, this is the actual sequence. What I will then do is duplicate it, right, using the same convention and just putting my initials at the end. And here you can even see that we've already sort of pre-put in adjustment layers that match the highlighted sections of the script that we've already talked about and decided are going to be part of the what will be graphic laid-in sections. So what I'm doing, though, and we have a little sample here, I can play some. So we put in a little section that this is sort of our demo section. It's actually, instead of our normal producer, it's Justin.
It can affect your heart, lungs, and brain.
So there, we're going to say, that's my section. That's a section for Mike. It's highlighted yellow in the script. We use different colors of highlighting. And what I will do is I will, in our global assets, we have an adjustment layer file, and we're simply, we're doing something very simple of pulling it in, it's already this color. And, what we do, which is a little bit for the sake of, keeping things, as sort of clear as possible, we're also, changing the color so that it matches exactly what,
And one way we use this too is sometimes it's a single designer on it, but we can basically be assigning it. What Mike's saying is that, like I said, they go through an actual Word script and they'll highlight the sections that are going to a different designer. Right. So Mike's actually putting the highlight color from that Word doc that corresponds to the designer who's getting assigned that section. Right. We can even get that granular if we want.
Hey, Mike, can I ask you to also make your, just pull Premiere so it's kind of filling the screen there so we can, there you go. Thank you.
Like that? Great.
Yeah, perfect. By the way, let me ask you this. I just did this whole little investigative journalism on Reddit around sort of features that people love and don't love so much. And something that came up a lot was, and I'm bringing this up because you're talking about labels, that we need more than 16 labels. Do you find in the stuff you're doing, like you're hitting a wall with the color labels and everything? You could use more?
No, because I do know you can make a custom one, but I did, what is interesting is that's like a setting that if I wanted my collaborator to have that same color, if I made a custom one, that I'd have to work around. Mike and I did discuss the naming of your label colors as sometimes not the totally intuitive.
Yeah. Yes.
I will say I do really enjoy the sort of analogous feature in Illustrator where you can change the layer color. So I do like that there are moments when I'm like, oh, I wish I could pick a slightly different color. So, but I'm also on the design team, so
Exactly. But actually, a good label feature that I realized that I think is a recent update is the ability to choose whether you're showing timeline layers or labels or source labels granularly on the timeline, which I think before was basically a project setting. It's like you were only seeing source labels or you were not seeing source labels. So that's great because he can just change the label. One adjustment layer in the project browser, and he can just change the color of it on the timeline instead of having to add more assets that aren't really doing much for you in the project browser, and more assets to manage. So
okay.
Yeah, so from here, what we would do is we would set our in and out point around this clip, for VO, because it's, this is my section. I want to make sure that, you can use the keyboard commands. Again, this is also like what's simple-ish about this is that, someone who's not a motion or a video editor can kind of go in, they can kind of do this sort of simple task and it makes sense for them. And then from there, we're going to export. I'm going to sort of just show, I'm not going to actually do this, but, we do our waveform, we make sure it's, we label it properly, something like VO, at the suffix, and then we, hit export, which I'm just going to.
What are your thoughts on this latest addition or update to the export panel here?
As a motion designer, I find it intuitive. I don't know, Justin, for someone who's doing far more exporting out of.
I like it. I mean, it's to me, it's iterative from before, so it's, it's not a sea change. I think to me, the export folder is much more connected, or the new export module is less of a sea change than the import module was. So it works for me. I'm almost always sending things to Media Encoder anyway.
Okay, yeah. Which doesn't really change anything at that point if you were,
Right.
Great point.
Right.
So are we now moving over to AE, Mike?
Yes. So imagine that I've exported my audio. This is it right here. This is my section of VO. This is in my motion graphics directory. This is in. Sorry, here it is. It's our demo VO. This is our section that I just exported. So this is in a different place on LucidLink. You can see the pins here because we're working on it. We're working very, we're working all the time in motion graphics in this directory. So I have it pinned. I have everything within it pinned. And then this is a local project that we work off of. We were working in team projects for After Effects for a while, but there were some bugs, and we can talk about that sort of later in this session about what sort of prevented us from doing that. But so, I'm opening my project, and sort of similar to Justin, we have sort of elements built in or like templatized out. So there are things, we have sort of our sections labeled sort of accurately, things like background colors, this sort of background texture. So this is actually like from our actual just the fact this is a much more complicated sequence than we'll demo today, but we are able to sort of pre-build a lot of the elements so that they can be in there. Things like colors, things like shapes, things like text on screen. Often our text operates in the same sort of style. It's the same font, it's the same size. So things of that nature, that's all sort of pre-built here. But things like the thing that I'm showing right now, this sort of diabetes, the way that blood sugar sort of is ingested by the body, that's something that we're making fully from scratch, and we can show you we're going to show you a little bit of that right now. Okay. So so basically, like, I'm going to pull, I would normally pull in my audio. We have a VO folder, again, sort of labeling as much as we can here to make sure it is clear if anybody else needs to open this project, if I need to share it with another designer, we're able to sort of navigate it all the same way. So in this, pretend this is a blank sequence or a blank comp. I'm pulling in my audio, and you can see
it
it
can
here.
affect your heart, lungs, and brain.
And I'm able to build out my sequence. And then, just one thing, obviously, is that I'm pulling in Illustrator files to sort of work off of and to work as elements. So I can also demo that right now, and I will do that for you. So, we're going to like pull in, in the same sort of folder directory that our project is in. We have our assets folder, and in here we're using a lot of elements that are also from Getty. We're kind of mixing, things that we're creating original illustration files, but also in the turnaround time, we're often pulling raw assets from Getty. And so this demo Illustrator file, I can actually. Yeah, so I've just pulled it in. I just imported it. It comes in as, I'm sorry, I actually did that a little quickly. Let me do that one more time.
So while you're doing that, let me ask you now: are all of these assets typically from like Getty or a stock service, or are you actually doing a lot of this stuff in Illustrator yourself?
So it depends on our turnaround time. Generally, we need we have a script. We have about a week or a week and a half to really create these things. Amongst with the idea that we're also balancing other requests, not just the series. So we're often pulling from Getty for very specific types of it would just take yes exactly. And especially since, it could take a while to figure out, like, oh, I've never maybe illustrated a heart before. What's the right type of heart? Those kinds of things. It's much easier to go to a service like that. And Gannett has a relationship with Getty. We have an account. Yeah, and different, and that's So
no shade for not mentioning Adobe stock, Mike. It's fine. It's
okay. I was thinking about that. I was like, oh yeah.
No. That's that's what this is all about. Like it would be weird to some degree. Like you're Gannett USA Today. I would think you have some relationship.
Well, so I mean, to that point, like we do have an incredibly robust photo library to rival Getty, honestly. So they'll obviously push us to use that. In addition, I'll be super honest. I mean, we had the Getty and AP accounts, before we had our Adobe stock account, and there's a lot of users who are just very entrenched in, and just very used to it. And
they know what to find and where to find it and how it. Yeah, I get that. It makes sense.
Yeah. So sorry, and just to sort of back up a bit, when I'm pulling in these Illustrator files, I'm just making sure what kind of how do I want this asset to import? Is it going to import as just footage, which would flatten a lot of the layers, or you're going in and you're choosing a specific layer, and that comes in as a singular object. What I want to do is hit composition, and then document size is fine. It's basically taking the documents. It's creating a comp the size of the Illustrator document itself. And there it is, basically with these layers here, already stacked. In this demo comp, I've sort of went ahead and I just sort of did a couple things. I added my effects. I added a little bit of rough and edges. I changed the colors a bit with fills, making them more USAT. Sort of, related to our brand package.
USAT is USA Today.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. I was just going to ask. I assumed, but I was like, maybe that's something else.
Yeah. So, and then, timing things out.
Lungs and
to
brain.
this VO. I often, we often put a little bit of time either on the end or on the front so that editors have a little bit of, ability to either do a fade or something to
Sure.
that effect
Yeah,
if they would
Yeah.
like. So we sort
But
of
generally we try to have them frame accurate with the audio, so it's able to just be kind of just dropped in place. But as Mike said, we give them some handles on that.
You have some handles, right? But they're not really trying to retime things to fit in any
Yeah.
way.
No. Yeah.
Mike's handled it on his side. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then, from here, again, I just want to show quickly that, we could, if we wanted to, from here also make, in this instance, I'm sort of treating these as sort of static
can
assets
affect
that
your heart.
have moves on them, but no internal movement. So that's why I've sort of left them as these Illustrator layers, or
Yeah.
they sort of, acting as solo objects. But, I could also go in and, we can create, a vector from the shape, and that has made, you can see that it's muted, it's made invisible the layer that I had, and now has given us almost an identical asset or layer, but with, vector, with the ability to sort of adjust the vector
Right.
shapes themselves. So it's a little hard to see, but,
Oh yeah, nice.
yeah. So, if we wanted to sort of do that, we could, but in this, for this one, project, it sort of makes sense to keep it that way.
So let me ask you, just
Yeah.
in talking about caches and things, because this is seemingly spinning up to real time very quickly. So are you keeping like global performance cache local, or I assume that's still local in After Effects, right?
Yes, yes, and often because we're sharing projects, but
Right.
we are not. We're generally, we don't have multiple people working in this project. This isn't a team project. So
You're
local
going to be handing
performance-
off a render. In other words, you're not
Yes.
needing the real time, unedited, make a change in the middle aspect. Of
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I just also, because these layers are connected to Illustrator, I just want to quickly show that I could. They still are
original.
dynamically linked to the
Yeah.
Illustrator project. So I just want to do a little.
Do you want to wait a sec? Because aren't we going to?
Sure.
We'll show that when we do the revision to the graphic. Is
Oh
that
yeah, that's right. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
that's
jumping
fine.
ahead.
No, that's
I'm jumping
fine.
ahead. I'm all over the place. I'm off script.
No, he's good. We're
Off
good.
the rails.
And Jason, if you want to get into why we're choosing to, do like a render out, not a
affect-
dynamic link, happy to get into that too.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I think you kind of answered it. I mean, it sort of makes sense in this context. I mean, I'm curious if there's a difference, but it would seem like in this sort of workflow, it does. I mean, I guess maybe it would be nice for you to see it in the context of your timeline as Mike's doing it, but realistically, especially because you have it so sort of templated and it's just easy to make these things, it just sort of speeds it up for him to hand you that render. And I suppose theoretically, well, you tell me why not a dynamic link?
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
this makes
sure.
sense.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's mostly a function of this, the way this kind of workflow needs to work for this project. This idea that they are bespoke graphics. Originally we kind of eschewed the dynamic link route because we felt there wasn't a need to continually be rendering it on the fly in the sequence, or
Exactly.
there was too much adjusting going on that it didn't make, that if you were going to render it on the timeline, you would have been constantly re-rendering it. So
Right.
this was
And a lot of that would have to do with the timing of the VO anyway, which you're once you send it to the designer, it's locked. You're not changing
exactly
that. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And so it was really just like fewer times rendering or less time spent rendering overall. A big part of that is also these graphics don't get a ton of revisions either. And we're going to show you that they do get revisions, but it's not like they're getting just like endlessly tweaked, and it makes sense to have those tweaks visible in real time. So that was kind of the biggest reason. One other thing we found is that when you're in a Premiere team project and you do a dynamic link out, it kind of creates an After Effects team project. But we found that there is this interesting line or wall that has been kind of broken down between. There's not a real distinction between a Premiere Pro team project and an After Effects team project. So you do this dynamic link, and all of a sudden you're in the After Effects team project. But what happens is the browsers between each program then end up needing to be synced, essentially. Right. So you start to see comps and bins in Premiere, and you start to see bins and sequences in After Effects side. And for this particular workflow, there was no need for that kind of shared visibility across the two projects. We felt that it just kind of added some visual noise. Again, dealing with a lot of people who might not be super organized. It was just kind of too much stuff to cut through. But we see that as being a really useful thing for the editor who's also doing their own motion graphics, and like how easy that would be to just kind of keep it in this one space as well. But so that's why
there's not really a handoff. But you're keeping it in a team project environment.
Yeah,
but the work is done by one versus multiple.
Yeah, and it's reflected back in the other where you might want to see that. So so that's why we've kind of skewed dynamic linking in the team project as it exists for now.
Yeah.
So
that makes total sense.
Yeah. All right, so Mike, you were at the point that you were rendering out your graphic, right?
Yeah,
you're rendering out your V1.
Yep. V1 is being rendered out. It's it's on Lucid for Justin to grab. It's right here. I think you all can see that, right?
Yeah. So it's there. If you want to flip back over to me, Jason.
Sure.
And Justin, I'm just going to publish my changes from the.
Please do. Okay, so this is my Finder. It's the exact same location that Mike just saw. I'm on some pretty wicked fast internet, so my stuff uploads and downloads pretty quick. So I didn't even get to see any of those indicators. But so now I have the graphic file here. So and look, there's a couple ways that we can do this. If say I'm my editor is just head down, really in the weeds, kind of getting what they need to be done. Mike's part of the project now. Mike could deliver this asset directly into a bin into the project and just say, hey, it's there whenever you need it. Often the editor, it's just a ping like, hey, that graphic's ready. But so these are the ways you can sort of eliminate some of that back and forth chat if you need to. Some ways to just kind of like just skip the middleman, boom, it's there. So so I'm gonna go ahead and import this new graphic in. I got it up right here. I'm just gonna go simple. I will go ahead and make some comments about the I don't know how much you kind of compared and contrast the recent updates to team projects, but I do just kind of want to point out that all this information that we're getting in this new version with changes and these kind of incremental, you can see on a more granular level what's happening in your project is probably the biggest improvement we've seen to team project in the last 2 years, because our big problem was just visibility, was knowing who is in what sequence, because you had to avoid that. If you didn't avoid who was in what sequence, you would cause conflicts, and someone could lose work. So a lot of our organizational structures in this protocol of like duplicating every sequence and putting your names was all to sort of help avoid these conflicts and to get the information that we weren't getting, but now we're getting this. So I can see on a granular level who is in what sequence, who is which things have updates available, and that's really, really useful just for your confidence in navigating this project. Because before there was this element of like, I hope hope someone else isn't in there, because like I got to do this. So that's huge.
I made a point to call that. By the way, if I can get you to just minimize that there's a little hide thing at the bottom of your screen there for the sharing, the little white bar at the bottom. Do you see it?
Thanks. Sorry.
There you go. I made a point to call that out too. Just like the UI elements of telling you, oh, Mike's in this project, someone's editing. The new color coding around those things is so improved, and just that much more obvious, because that was, I think, a major pain point for some. where they had confidence, but without really knowing, and then you get into the, do we merge this, copy this, scenario, and that gets a little complicated.
We have another project with basically a long form, mid form, like kind of news sports magazine show, and this is something that gets shot long form and then sliced and diced into like every conceivable thing, and like I literally have 5 people in the same project at the same time. I have like an AE setting up a multicam, I have someone doing a cut on a segment, I have someone cutting that segment down to VOD, to short form, so that visibility of who's doing what and just right at your fingertips, just speeds things up. I'm not saying, what sequence are you in, or what are you working on, and that person's on lunch and they don't get back to me, and everything grinds to a halt, right? So again, it's this communication, this information is just right in front of your face. So,
Nice.
Okay, so I imported the new graphic. I am going to. So meanwhile, I'm going to open this new sequence. So meanwhile, while Mike was working on that graphic, our editor went ahead and duplicated it again and incremented it to V3, and they were working on all the other parts. So they were doing the stock B-roll sections of this video. They threw some music down in here. We do like remix a lot
nice.
for this.
Most liked feature in a recent Reddit poll that I did was remix.
Good, because you know what it is for me. Like, I'm a sting it out kind of guy. I know there's a big battle whether you got to sting it out or whether the fade works. I'm a big sting it out kind of guy, and teaching that to a producer editor and getting them to care about that can be tricky. And remix has really kind of like saved my life on that, because I'm like, look, it's stung out, you're good.
Well, let me ask you about that too. So I was commenting, so it's interesting, I had a lot of comments from people, and I of course, so I'm a engineer, musician, composer myself, but I was talking about, because they were saying, and you'll understand this, so remix, one of the things that it does is that it does have this sort of plus or minus 5-second buffer right at the end. So a lot of times you can drag it to where that hit is on that last frame of video, but there's a couple of extra, it could be milliseconds, it could be an extra second or two, just because it's trying to maintain the beat structure.
Right.
So one of the requests that we've had as well, couldn't you just while still doing the remix, without using like a stretch algorithm, right? Because it's not doing a stretch, couldn't you just make it fit? And I said, well, yes, but it's trying to maintain, like in a 4/4 time, pop song, rock song, whatever, dance track, whatever the underscore is trying to maintain that beat structure so it's the same. So yes, it could cut out a beat or two here or there. Average person would never know, and then it would be the exact time. But today it doesn't exactly do that. It tries to maintain the same time.
Yeah, and what I tell people is it's like it can't break the laws of time and space, you know what I mean? It's like you said.
Well, it could. It's not doing it now.
It could, but I don't know if you'd want it to, right? You know what I mean?
Well, that's interesting that you say that, because and by the way, I'm all for it, but like that's the thing is, I think, in fact, I was calling this out recently, and I'm sure the two of you do this. Problem is, you edit this kind of stuff, you do so much of this, it's hard to watch anything, right? Because you're breaking it down one way or the other. And I was watching, I won't call it out, but I was watching some commercial the other day. Anyway, there was some music going on underneath, and they absolutely cut out every fourth beat for about 10 seconds. So the drums were just off, right? There was like missing one snare hit every fourth beat. They just cut it out so that it could end right on that sting at the end. And I was telling this to my wife, and she's like, you need to get out of the house. And I was telling her, though, I said, no, but average person's not going to care. You didn't care. She goes, no, I don't care. And it fit perfectly. So that's one way to do it, right?
Yeah.
And this kind of makes me think of some of the suggestions people were asking. It's like most people will never notice, and as long as it fits and you get that boom right at the end, particularly in, if you're doing sort of broadcast commercials or whatever, no one really cares, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
I'm glad we do,
My
but most people
argument,
don't.
well, I agree. My argument is that maybe people don't notice, maybe people don't care, but they still are affected by the choice because of
That's right.
because of the subconscious nature of what video editing
Yes.
does. You know. So,
That's right. That's right. All right.
all right,
I like
let me
it.
Come
I
down
like
off
it,
my
Justin.
box straight real quick.
No, hey, listen, you're in the right place to be in that box. I love it.
Cool. So, all right. So, so we were in here while Mike was working on that graphic. The editor was moving the edit along, moving the timeline along. So we've got some music. We've got some of these other sections ready to go. So I'm ready to bring Mike's graphic into our timeline. So I'm just going to go ahead, and this was just duplicated. So this. It's just incrementally building upon. So here's the section I'm covering now. I know the graphic that he gave me was an alpha graphic, so I've just kind of thrown a little background on here. I'm just gonna go ahead.
We're not getting your sound for some reason, but I won't worry about it for now. I don't need you to. We can still. And we know
you're not
you
hearing
say
me?
The heart.
No,
the
from
lungs,
Premiere.
and the brain.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah, sorry. Your voice is fine. Yeah, we're not getting your Premiere sound.
thank you.
We were getting it with mics,
Okay.
but not you. But we won't worry about it. It's fine.
Okay. Yeah, it's not too much. So I'm just gonna go ahead and audio. Go ahead, edit that in. So that's looking good to me.
Very nice. By the way, oh hey, Christine Steele, she's chiming in and saying, she said, I appreciate hearing these professional, personal preferences as regards to your real-world experience. Subtle subframe details make a difference in feel and final quality.
Preach it.
Christine
That's,
knows.
That's
right.
Exactly.
Yes, indeed. Oh, and Andrea Stewart is saying remix is a problem when you're using with unlicensed music and then need to replace it with the licensed. It might help to have straight lines to show the cuts instead of zigzags. So I could speak to that. Andrea, that's interesting that you bring that up because, of course, you don't really see the zigzags. Or I guess you do see them on the Premiere side too now, don't you? Yes. Initially you didn't. Yeah. But of course, the remix engine, which is an AI ML based thing, even if it should do it exactly the same, but it's not guaranteed to do the remix exactly the same every time. So I hear what you're saying. Yeah, I don't know the solution to that.
Yeah.
Even with the same settings, if sometimes that M4A file, which just has less fidelity, the engine says like, oh, I can cut it. Yeah, it cuts it differently sometimes.
And that choice could be based on your music cue reporting needs as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes some people need that needle drop like every time. But I'll just make one more mention on remix before we move on. To that point of like getting that like perfect spot that you want it to land on. What I found is, here, let me go ahead and actually cue one up.
And by the way, just so you know, we have approximately 4 minutes left.
Oh, all right. Then
I'll tell you, it flies by.
You're right. Let's move ahead. Okay, sorry. So, all right, we got our edit down here. We're gonna star wipe forward. Let me get this in the right place. So we would have so basically we have a full edit. We get back down to we have a full edit. So now what I could do is I can invite a producer in to, instead of exporting this out to Frame.io, even using the panel, having them put in the comments, I've got Premiere savvy producers. So I'm going to bring my producer in. I'm going to go ahead and invite them. He's on vacation. He won't mess things up. So I'm going to go ahead and invite my producer. My producer can kind of come in. We're just going to have them drop their notes wherever they want. For here, they're going to drop a note. They're like, you know what? We want to change the color and make the trachea bigger. So, and
again, your reasoning for doing that in this context is basically it saves you a render step in Frame, and you trust that they're reviewing. Also, but you can lock the sequence too, so they're not making a change. This is one of the new team projects things, right?
I can even have it open and have them go into it as a view only sequence,
right,
to ensure that they can't mess anything up. So just great. For time here, so we were asked to make a revision to a couple things. So what we can do now, Mike, if you could switch back over to Mike, and hopefully we can get this out.
Yep. And Mike, you got a minute and 49
Okay.
seconds.
All right. All right.
He's just going to
So I'm
make
making-
some
I'm
quick
making this
changes.
trachea bigger, making it bigger. Let's consider it that.
All right,
I'm hitting
good.
save. Right. It's dynamically linked. Oh, there goes that trachea. It just got bigger. Wonderful.
Yep.
So he just
I
made
am
that
gonna
change in
literally change-
in Illustrator, and it just rippled through to After Effects. He's going to change the color.
Thank you, Justin, for narrating. I've never felt so special. This is so cool. Here we are, and then I'm literally gonna go and hit export.
Right. You can tell you two work together a lot.
We
I like
finish
it.
each
I
other's
like it.
sandwiches all the
Yes,
time.
right. Sandwich. You got me there. Okay.
And so what he's going to do is he's going to actually overwrite this file right now. He's going to overwrite it on disk because then it is just going to pop up on my timeline. I don't need to bring in a new file. I don't need to
Re-import or anything.
Yep.
There's no. Yeah. I love that. I love that you're doing that. I know we're almost out of time. I love committing that. I love committing the overwrite. I imagine, and I know talking to many, a lot of people don't do that. They want the revisions. They want all the versions. When you know, you know.
And
right?
the way we do it, Mike's got them. So Mike has his after, he can always get back to that earlier version of the comp and
Sure,
re-render it, but he's
exactly.
also backing up. He's got his own graphics,
Right.
folders on the LucidLink file space. So he's making backups. We can sort of
Right.
leave that tracking off the editor's plate. So
And that's an excellent point, is that he has that, and you, as the person sort of living in the Premiere environment, you don't need all those other things. You just want the one that's living in the timeline that's ready for that sort of final review, etc. So
Exactly.
that makes total sense. Gentlemen, I'm sorry, we are out of time. This was awesome. It was so great to have you. Thank you so much for your insights.
Yeah,
commentary,
thanks.
Kind of really going deep into all these workflow processes. I hope we can maybe I can get you to come back again and we can dive into some more projects.
Love it.
It was a true joy.
all right, thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you again. You can catch more on Adobe Live today. And until then, have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. And we'll see you again next time. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.